one of the things not to forget is take your swatches layer, and once you get the colors that you want on your swatch layer done, lock that layer and make sure to convert that layer to a guide layer so that it doesn't publish when you publish your movie. So when you look at the movie, there is no well, they're outside of the area, but even if they were on the stage, they wouldn't publish with it because they're simply a guide layer, but they stay with your project. And again, you can add swatches to your swatch palette. The disadvantage of doing that is they stay with the machine, and on these machines, when they reboot, Deep Freeze wipes it, so it works well on your home machine. But if you bring your file here, your swatches won't be part of it. So that's another challenge to factor into that. So now that I've done this, go to my sheep and deselect. I'm going to grab the pencil tool and try again, this time now that I believe I have everything colored as kind of how I want it. Now I can go through and decide that. Add a little bit of color change along the edges. Remember, when doing these kinds of things, you don't have to necessarily be real close with your edges. Your lines can go over, because then as you go to fill, they're not going to, it can extend out with there's no harm at that point. So I want, let's see, his head is going to be casting kind of a shadow. His ear over here. And his mouth will move over that. If I wanted, which would actually be kind of fun, is then if I had a shadow that I draw with his lower jaw that moves while he does it. Add a little highlight across over here. And now it's just simply a matter of grab the eyedropper, grab a color, and hit. Alright, I forgot to continue that line all the way up. Let's go back to the pencil tool. And I think the hole is right there. Let's try again. There we go, now it colored it a little. And there must be a hole over there at some point, so let's... And this is part of the fun of trying to figure out where those holes are. Now I'm going to say close small gaps and see if then it... Apparently it's a medium gap I'm trying to close. Or a large gap somewhere, so I have to go hunt down. If that's the case, then I'm going to need to really go and find where that gap is occurring. But you can see how I'm very quickly starting to add in color without having to carefully paint in those fill shapes. And I have a hole again. Not seeing it though. So it's somewhere in there. It's probably over here. And this is just part of the excitement and joy and fun of trying to find all those details. So there's somewhere over here some sort of gap that's causing it to misbehave. Because I'm really not seeing those. Sometimes what can work, especially if my background color is not super dark, is if you turn on... Oh. So what this shows me is I turn this layer over to... I close some gaps, but I close gaps on my swatch layer, so when I turn that off I can see the gaps that I was missing on that layer. So if I go back to this layer with my brush tool, let's go choose the right color though. So it's now showing me that when I started closing some of those gaps, I was actually on the wrong layer, which would explain why it was misbehaving so badly as part of that. I think that looking a little bit closer. So it's very important while you're working to always pay attention to what layer is active and make sure you lock your layers correctly while you're going. There we go, much better. Yeah, no. Actually, that's not bad. I'll live with that for now. We can start to add in as much detail or lack of detail as you want. So now that I have my basic head shape here, I'm going to label it. I'm going to add a layer. This will be my mouth. Now on the mouth layer, I'm going to paint with the brush and create my sheep. And the sheep then, no, lock, oh, don't. Oh, I see. Forgot to. I was thinking I drew the lip, but I was using the line from previous layer. Gonna close that at the chin, draw a lip. So this is gonna be the start of my sheep mouth, and then we'll take that whole mouth section, animate that onto its own layer. Now, if you do a real simple flat mouth or flat face color, and then you just have a basic mouth shape and you just change from the very basic mouths, it can be a much faster proposition. But once you have the artwork done, the actual syncing of the artwork to the animation goes pretty quick. It's just, it gets a little tedious if you're trying to do a feature length piece, but if you only have a minute or 2 minutes of animation, you can bang that out in half an hour or less of getting the basic mouth changing, which we'll be looking at momentarily. So I know that I want this to be filled with pink, and I'll have that filled with pink, and then I want to have and fill part of it with the yellow like that. Again, after you draw it with the green lines, which I think I still have to do on the sheep. Yeah, I still have to get rid of all the green lines. When you have the green lines, of course, the technique for getting rid of those lines is to draw something that intersects all of your pencil lines. Switch to the select tool, double click, and if you're lucky it chooses all of them in one fell swoop, and you hit delete and the lines go away. And emphasize if you're lucky, because it doesn't always work. And it might take 2 or 3 if you get a few stragglers, because they just don't pick up for whatever reason. So now on this layer here, the mouth layer, again select nothing. This one I can probably just double click on it and it should choose it and delete. So now I have my sheep who's ready to start moving that mouth. If I don't move anything else, I could just simply just select all of it. So I could move the mouth like this and then have different things show up, but I think then we need teeth to come through or something, so I almost need to cut this part of the head out and get it onto a layer above. And this is part of the artwork construction process. It's never, there is no formula of you draw this, you draw this, you draw this, and then you're done. It's something that along the way you're like, oh, I should have done it like this, or I should have just drawn the big furry kind of masses and then drawn that head shape on top on its own layer and had it separated, and that would have allowed me to do this a little bit faster, but that's okay. We can select these things pretty readily because it's not that complex. So if I go here, select that gray, hold down shift, select the pink. Unfortunately, I guess it's going to choose all that. I almost need to just do a little touch of erasing of the orange so it doesn't pick up the fur as well. So it'll be an easy fix quickly with the eraser if we just go erase, erase. And the reason for doing this is then when I try to select these color areas, I can extract the sheep head out. So now I can select that pink. If I select the orange here, it only, what's, oh, right there, it didn't. Let's go back to the eraser. One more little erase. And now let's try again. So now if I select orange, just chose the head. And I can choose brown, red, pink, red, orange. And that looks good. So now I can cut that. Whoop, almost. Let's try again. And now cut it. That'll work. And now this will go. And there's, in Flash, we have paste, and then we can paste in place, so it pastes where it copied it from. So I do paste in place. It puts it down. Now at that point, I can turn it off, turn off the mouth. We'll call this face. So you have the mouth, the face, the head, and now I can actually just kind of continue these lines a little bit and finish the art. The next phase is to convert these things to symbols, and then we can start working with those. So my mouth here, going to unlock it, selected that, chooses the mouth. Kind of debating, I think I'm just going to do a lower lip and teeth and then change the shape of the lower lip, but leave the upper part of it, or we could put the upper lip with it, but in the interest of time I'm going to just leave this head part with its upper lip unchanged, and only the lower lip will change, and we'll show teeth and everything because it will be on a layer beneath the face, so it will always be below. So the face is going to be on top, so as the mouth moves it can come out to reveal teeth and everything else like that, and change its shape based on what I need my sheep to say. So the mouth I'm going to convert to a symbol. The type of symbol I'm going to use is going to be a graphic symbol, not a movie clip in this instance, because we need a different type of control over it. So this is going to be my mouth. And we'll understand what type of control we need momentarily. So there's my mouth. Now I'm going to turn that layer off so I know. So I'm going to turn off everything here. Head, which isn't a great name, but we'll just call it that for now. I will unlock, select it, convert it to a symbol. This one, it doesn't really matter because it's not really doing anything. It could be a movie clip, could be a graphic, which in that case, my preference is to err on the side of making it a movie clip, because you can always make an instance appear or behave like a graphic. So I think that works a little bit better there. So I'm going to call this, I'll just name it to match the layers. So this is now head, furriness, neck, whatever you want to call it. And
everything has to be
If everything is a symbol, it's going to make your life a lot easier down the road. So the only one that has to be a graphic is the mouth shape that we're going to be changing based on the dialogue. Everything else could be a movie clip, it could be a graphic. It's not going to really matter too much either way in this case.
How long do things from one layer to another, like the mod family?
We do not need all 26 letters to represent it because we have specific phonetic sounds that we make. We can simplify that down to 9 basic phonetic sounds. And if we represent those, we're able to then animate effectively to those and cover the bulk of what we need our animation to say. So when I'm doing this, in my original sketch layer, I'm just going to guide that out because I don't need that either. So when I look at my mouth layer here, this basic mouth layer, I need to now start changing that to correspond to things. So if I double click on the mouth, it brings me into symbol editing mode. So I can see from scene 1 I'm now where it says mouth. So that tells me that I'm in symbol editing mode. I'm not at the main root timeline. It's at the symbol editing mode that I'm going to create my different mouth shapes. Now this is a time where I'm noticing I will need my swatches to be able to create those mouth shapes, and probably even some additional swatches. So I'm going to copy those swatches that I have here, and then when I go into my symbol, add a new layer, right click on the layer and choose guide, and I can paste those swatches, move them over. Now I'm going to go back and turn back on the face because I actually need to be able to see that so I can see where I want to draw the teeth and everything else. Because if this is going to be my kind of my sound, where you have your lips tight, kind of pursed a little bit, or even a basic neutral kind of sound or shape for the mouth, at this point, this is where I want it to move. Now, one thing that's going to happen during this is you might find some of what you do is going to be frame by frame animation, and some of what you do is going to just be doing kind of transforms using the free transform tool as you go to move things or adjust it as you go through the different shapes. So if I go to open the mouth, I can see that I'll need to redraw it differently, add in teeth and other things like that. But for the M sound, the mouth is closed and tight. And I want to have access to this mouth for a future frame, so I'm going to hit F6 so I have it on a second keyframe so I can go back to this first one, that M sound. And it's important while we're doing this that frame 1 corresponds to mouth shape 1, frame 2 corresponds to mouth shape 2, because then when we go to sync this to audio, we're going to need to have that correspondence so we don't have to keep going into the symbol and go, oh, which mouth is on which frame? So if your 9 mouth shapes correspond to the 9 numbers on the sheet, it's going to be much easier for you to work out your animation. So now back to this first mouth shape. I'm going to pull it up a little bit, stretch it out. Now your mouth will vary and be different depending on what you're doing. I also find when you're doing this, it sometimes is easier to first build your mouth shapes where you just do the outlines and you get all 9 how you want them, and then you go back and add in the different colors that you need to flesh them out. So in this case, if I wanted to just throw this away in its entirety, go grab my orange, grab my brush, And now if my sheep is stretching his lip, or his sound, now when I want to go fill this, I'll have to remember that it will require me to have a closed shape. So if I want to fill this with color, it's easy. Now I can just draw the line, since that part's not going to show since it's beneath the face. So if that's my sound, I don't even want this one anymore, so I'm just going to throw it away. For my O sound, I can just start to create my O. And what's important is come up with artwork, come up with things that work for you. There is no absolute, there is no right or wrong. You just come up with what you want. So that'll be my O. And now my next frame that I work with, the F and V, is going to require me to, now I will have teeth occurring on it. And the black that turned out in the handout should actually show teeth, because if you think about the F or V sound, you put your top teeth on your bottom lip. And it's a lot of animators actually keep a mirror at their workstation, and they make faces in the mirror to see what shape do I need for this expression or for this sound. But if you go to make the sound, the F and V, you bite down on your lower lip and press. So I'm going to do that with my creature here. And then you, at this point, just cycle through the different shapes. So after you get your different mouths drawn, at this point, theoretically, you could start syncing it with animation, or if you decide that you want a little more detail in your artwork, such as color, so it's easier to see before you start syncing it, you could do that now. You can do that before or after. It's not a bad idea, especially when you're working on something big or complex, is to get it to a rough stage and try it out to make sure you're on track. But I'm going to go ahead and add some color into mine, and then we'll find some audio and start working with that. The next thing that I need to do is I need to bring the audio into Flash. So I'm going to need to bring some audio in, so import. And I always recommend for audio, well, I missed. I was trying to say import to library, but I accidentally hit import to stage, but that's okay. It's not going to be a big deal. Uh-oh. It didn't like my audio, so I need to resave it. So I've added a new layer. I'm going to make that layer just for audio. And now, still recommend file import to library. And again, Audition WAV files have some issues going into Flash. Audio needs to be at 4416 or lower quality, so CD quality or less, otherwise it fails. And then I can hit open, and now that should work. Look in my library, there's my audio. So now at this point, sound is a property of a frame, so I click on a frame. I go over to sound in my property panel, and I can choose sheep. And now I just need to give this frames, so I can just keep hitting F5 until it stretches itself out. And Looks like we got a few extra frames. I can get rid of those now. Shift F5, frames go away. Now this particular sound, I recommend when we are doing lip syncing, you set it to stream. So then when you scrub, so if you thought the sheep sounded dumb and forward, it's even scarier in reverse. Now at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull my swatch layer down. Don't really need to see that anymore. Can turn that off. So I have my face layer, I have my mouth layer, my head layer. Now with these three layers, all I'm going to do is extend those out for now. So I'll just click over there, hit F5, that extend out. Now if we look, the sheep's mouth is just going to keep rotating through its different colors. Or I mean different shapes. Now as part of this, I'm going to save it now that I have all these pieces done so far. I can test movie.
A group of megalomaniac zombies finds a dead body in a mansion. A group of
So what you can see is happening is that mouth is continually looping or cycling between different frames. The real magic trick going on here is that, and I've added in some moving eyes just for effect, but the real magic trick going on is the mouth, and currently as we saw, when it plays, it just plays non-stop. But it's possible to modify that. So I can modify this a little bit by taking this mouth layer, selecting its symbol, and with that symbol selected, in my property panel, I need to verify I'm seeing this as a graphic, not a movie clip, and now my graphic has a property movie clips don't possess, and that's called looping. And I can toggle or twirl that open, and now I have an option to decide what I want to choose. Currently it's set to loop, so what happens is it advances one frame of its animation to one frame of the movie. So I went through 9 frames, I've gone through once. Frame 10, it starts over at its first frame, so it keeps looping. But if the movie doesn't advance, it doesn't advance. That's one of the differences between a movie clip and a graphic symbol. A graphic symbol will only advance when the timeline containing it advances. A movie clip will play its timeline no matter what, unless you tell it through code to do otherwise. So this mouth symbol is currently set to loop, but I can instead choose single frame, and currently I'm on frame 1. So it's closed, and now when I go through and figure out what my first sound is going to be, and this is where having my cheat sheet of mouths with numbers is handy. So I start out with A. Let's see where it starts. So it's right about here. I need to transition from my closed mouth to my A. Right about here. So I click on my mouth layer, and at this point I can hit F6 on the keyboard to insert a keyframe, and now I can click on that mouth and decide I need to go to frame 4. And we can now see it transition to frame 4. Typed in the number, hit the button. A group. So at that point my mouth is going to open and close between those, so I need to figure out where it says group and close my mouth before that so I can reopen it for the G sound. So I'm hearing group right about here. So F6, click on the mouth, close this. I'll go back to frame 1. Go over a couple frames, F6, click on the mouth, it goes to frame 8. G-R-O, that'll be 5. Group. So click on the mouth, F6, and it goes from 8 to 5. Oh, whoops. And be careful you don't highlight too much when you don't. You can see I put in a few too many. Let's try and undo that. Thought something seemed funny when it flashed on me and I didn't look close. Now this will be frame 5. So click. Group. I'm going to pull that keyframe over one because this is more of the P sound here, which is going to be back towards frame 1. So as you can see, it's not so much difficult as it's going to be just a little time consuming. So it's just a matter of syncing those in. This is the traditional method. Click on the timeline, click on the F6, click on the frame, change the number. And this works okay, but when we utilize the downloaded panel of FrameSync gives me some additional features that make it a little bit easier. So when I click on my symbol, what I can do is I can start working with this and controlling it, and I can now choose single frame, and I can base it on keyframes. But if you notice, those numbers don't help too much. If I don't want to always have to use my cheat sheet, I have an option to use what are called frame labels. And now if I use these frame labels, I don't actually have any labels yet in it. So I'm going to just jump into my symbol here. I'm going to add a new layer. Now on frame 1, I'm going to click on frame 1, click over here and type in MBP for the sounds that it makes. Now that I've done that, I'm going to click at the next frame and I will hit F6, and now this keyframe is going to be my O. My next keyframe is going to be my FV sound. And if I continue this all the way through, when I go back and click on the mouth and choose refresh panel, you can notice how I get my MBP, I get O, I get V, which is going to make syncing a lot easier. So I click on the symbol and I can even say auto convert to keyframe. So I just scrub to where I want, click on this, and we'll see all the magic happen in just one moment. And again here. So I've inserted all of my frame labels inside my mouth symbol, each of my frame labels. So I click on a frame, insert the correct letter. So back at the main root timeline, here is the mouth. With the mouth selected, we can see that. And then what I can say is auto convert keyframe. So if I go through and figure out what I want to say, so it was a group of that. I think I'm going to go with the A sound. So it seemed right about here. I want to add in my A sound. So I can click and then just hit. And all I did was click on it and it automatically put that keyframe in for me. So now at this point, click, and now I go my FV of, stretch that out for a couple frames, and then we'll transition right into them. So let's find the megalo. So it looks like at this point we close the mouth right about here. So just close it. Oh, click on the mouth, close it.
A group of megalomaniacs
So right here I need to open up to an E sound. Then to my G. Mega. So I think this is a lot faster. You scrub, click on it, choose the label you're looking for, automatically puts it in. You're in pretty good shape.
A group of megalomaniacs.
Mega, la. I think la was right about here. Mega, la. Oh.
Megalomaniac.
E. Act. And then go to our consonant sound. So.
Group of megalomaniac zombies.
Not bad. It's almost starting to look like an actual real animated mouth. So now if I actually test movie to watch this.
A group of megalomaniac zombies finds a dead body.
Alright, so we're getting there, and now I need to get zombies. And at that point, I think I'll be happy. You know, as long as I get my evil sheep to say zombies, I think I'm in pretty good shape. So we just need to find that
Maniac zombie.
maniac zombies.
Zombie.
So I'm going to close the mouth right here, and then get the zombies
Zombie.
reopening right about here. Notice zombies, it's not zombies, it's well, if I was zombies, if I was British, it would be a zombie, but I'm not, so it's a zombie, so I use the A sound. And then
Would be a good idea just to tape yourself saying the
oh,
things.
and you someone said tape it. Tape your mouth, actually videotape your mouth saying these things, or have a mirror handy so you can watch what you're saying and see the shape and then aim for that mouth too. So E's, I think E is right about here.
Zombies.
Now I need to go to an E sound here. E. Z.
Fine.
And close.
A group of megalomaniac zombies finds a dead
Okay,
body.
my zombie starts just a titch late, so let's pull that keyframe over.
Is there a good way to tell when things start later?
Zombies find a group of megalomaniac zombies finds a
So it's still a little bit off on the zombie part. It needs to come over just a little bit more, but it's getting close. And it's really just a matter of you just listen and adjust the frame. If you build your animation at 12 frames per second, you may find that some of your lip syncing gets a little bit hard to get the finesse that you need. And that's part of the challenge. It's not unheard of. You have your 9 basic shapes and then you make a few extras for when someone is yelling or screaming, or you just find the shape doesn't quite fit for a certain sound on a certain word and you need something else, and then you build a few extras. If you're using the FrameSync panel, it's really easy to have more than 9 as part of it. But the 9, it's been found that somewhere between 7 and 9 suffices for probably 90% of the lip syncing activities that is done for cartoon animation. And that's really all there is to it. It's just a matter of slogging through. If you have a real long, multiple characters talking, it can take a bit of time, but using FrameSync, you can see it goes together pretty quick. So make sure to have some fun with it.